What's happening, guys? JD at JD's Custom Buggies. A lot of you guys have been following the carbide build, the number 7, so for MBX, and I was about to start working on the motor. So I had to open a bunch of packages because I was about to clutch it, and I figured that it'd probably be a good opportunity to just do a quick video on basic clutching setup and what parts do what in the CVT system. So things add all this visual aid. So we're going to start with the Variator. So what I'm going to install on this guy, this motor here, is it's an OCO Variator. Couple things make this different than a stock Variator. Take it apart. First off, the ramp angles are a little different, a little more aggressive, a little steeper. So what that will do is ramp the rollers up a little bit quicker, the roller weights. There is a coating on this to keep wear down and to help everything glide a little better. And how this works is, comes stock with 12-gram rollers, this guy. Now, stock on a buggy or a scooter is 14 gram. We'll get into roller weights in a second. So the rollers, for those of you who don't know, they sit in a ramp. There's 6 of them. And as the motor spools over and starts turning, what it does is it forces the roller up the ramp. And when that happens, there is a boss, looks like a silver cylinder that goes in here, but it pushes against this backing plate and closes the gap between this faceplate, and the belt sits in between there, and as that happens and this squeezes together, it pushes the belt up in the ramp, or in the drive face. Okay, so like I said, stock weights on any buggy or scooter or anything you buy with a GY6 is 14 grams. So the difference is you can change the weights. In this case, this Variator comes with 12-gram weights. Very popular sizes like 10-gram roller for what we do, you know, for a buggy application. And by lightening the weights, what happens is it lessens the leverage, takes leverage away from this getting, you know, pushed as quickly, because there's less weight or less centrifugal force, there's less leverage pushing this out. And what that does is it keeps it in the lower gear longer, because as these two pieces squeeze together and the belt rides up, you're basically shifting gears and going into a higher gear. So it takes longer for it to do that, so it keeps it in the lower gear longer. And then when you let off the gas, it'll downshift quicker, because the weights will drop quicker. Okay. For a buggy, my experience is 10 grams as light as you want to go. 12 grams is probably as heavy as you want to go. And then, you know, we sell half gram weight too. So we actually sell like a 10, a 10 and a half, 11, 11 and a half, 12, 12 and a half. In roller weights. Now, the other thing we can do, which seems to work really well for buggy application, is use a slide weight. And if you compare the two, you know, this is a little bit triangular, this is perfectly round, and this sticks up a little further. And what this does, instead of rolls, it flips. By sticking out like it does there at the top, it actually gives a little more range into the Variator, so it actually has a little more surface to push the belt up further in the Variator. The other benefit of this is the shifting. The downshift, I mean, it's more abrupt, at least I can tell when there's a slider in there. The upshifting and the downshifting is a little more abrupt and a little more like notchy. I kind of like it. Tends to lend towards engine braking. When you let off the gas, it just downshifts, you know. So I kind of like the way they feel. The downside to these are, with a roller weight, you can put it in, you can't screw it up. It goes in one way. the slide weight, you've got to make sure it's in the right way. If it's not in the right way, then it's not going to work right at all. It's going to be horrible. Dr. Pulley's smart. Inside the package, when you buy a set of Dr. Pulley sliders, they actually have a diagram that will show you the right way to put it in. So you want to make sure that's in there the right way. Otherwise, you're spending the extra money and not getting any benefit. In fact, you're going to go backwards. Another part of Variator tuning that since I've really gotten into since MBX, just trying to squeeze out any little extra performance I can out of my stuff, and it's an SSP-G shim kit, Variator shim kit. And what this does is, like I said, you have a Variator boss that goes in here. It's the cylinder, and that slides over the crankshaft, and then this butts up against it and gets bolted to it, to the end of the boss. So what these shims do is they actually fit on the end of the boss. So you put your boss in, you put your Variator in, and then before you put your face plate in, you can use these shims. Now it comes in a package of 3. There's a 1mm shim and 2 0.5mm shims. You can play with it and see what feels good, and it's all about feel. What this will do is actually allow the belt and spread this apart just a little bit more to let the belt fall further in there and sit all the way at the bottom. Otherwise, in most cases, even though when you get the belt on there, it's still kind of wedged in between the faceplate and the Variator. So by adding the shims, what it'll do is allow that belt to actually sit at the bottom, so it will kind of delay when you step on the gas and give it a little bit of stall before this actually grabs the belt. Now, with rollers, you can, I mean, if you wanted to throw all of 3 of these shims at it, if it felt right to you, you could. With a slider, you have to be more careful. I would not go more than 1.5mm of shim. So that's maybe 2 0.5mm, which will give you 1, or the 1mm shim by itself, or maybe even the 1mm and the 0.5mm. But to put all 3 of these in, the reason why I say that is because having that much space, we've seen instances where the weights have flipped all the way over and not been able to right themselves back up into their original position, which kind of gets everything stuck and jumbled. So you want to be careful with the slider how much you shim. Okay. Now, what links these 2 pieces together, and we're going to get to the clutch next, is our belt. Now, belts, the standard belt that you want to go with is a Gates. Alright, Gates PowerLink is probably the gold standard, or the bar. You can get better than Gates. You don't want to be worse than Gates. Okay. If you find on eBay or Amazon somebody selling belts for $10 a piece, you don't want that belt. That belt won't last you a weekend. Okay. It might be good for a 150cc scooter, but as far as the buggies go, you're turning 2 big fat ATV tires on a live axle on a machine that's twice the weight. And I've done it. I've bought cheap belts. I used to have a crop of like a herd of buggies. We had like 9 in our stable at one time that we used to invite a bunch of friends over. And I bought like 10 cheap belts on eBay to go ahead and change all the belts out because I figured they were due. I only got the 4 of them that one weekend, and we went riding and we broke 4 belts in that weekend. So I ended up slapping the old Gates belt back on, and that was the last time I ever bought anything but a Gates. Now, recently I've been using the Bando Kevlar belt for racing purposes, and I couldn't tell you if it's any better yet. I haven't broken one, but I really haven't broken a Gates either. So I figure it's out there. I'm gonna try it, a little added protection. And believe it or not, you'll want to check belt wear depending on how hard you ride from time to time. Just to give you an example, in a season of 6 races, I actually ended up changing my belt twice. And the reason I did that was I felt the RPMs were down. It felt dull. And what happens is the belt wears down and gets narrow, and it doesn't ride up and down the pulley the same. So, I mean, I've lost RPMs, not having the belt, losing the width on the belt, and changed it out, and it felt better again. So, if it starts to feel dull, that would be the first thing I start. Look for flat spots in your rollers. and look for a worn belt. Getting to the clutch. Okay, so on this particular application, we're going to use this OKO, what we would call a high stall clutch or a 2000 RPM clutch, and I'm going to explain that. What makes this different than stock is A, the pad material is better, it's more abrasive, less slip, and the other thing is that the springs installed in it are actually 2000 RPM. Now, is that a balls on 2000 RPMs? I don't know. I usually rate the springs heavy, light, heavy, and medium. I don't know if they actually kick in at 2000 RPMs on the nose. But in this case, if you bought the springs, they'd be labeled as 2000 RPMs. They usually come in the color red. Blue usually simulates or signifies it's a lightweight spring, which is usually 1000 RPMs, and yellow bings 1500. Some makes change the colors up, but that's usually kind of sort of 90% of the time the universal code for what spring you're using. So what happens is these springs here, they're heavier than stock, and they actually keep these shoes. There's 3 hinge shoes on here, clutch shoes, that throw out and grab the bell at a certain RPM. In this case, 2000. Okay, what that does is going to give you stall. Now, if you're familiar with drag racing, there's what's called a stall converter. People put it on automatic transmissions on a drag car, and like if you put a 3500 RPM stall converter on your drag car, it would not roll an inch until it hit 3500 RPMs. And what that does is give you a better launch. Well, same premise here. Motor is going to spool over to about 2000 RPMs before these shoes throw out and grab the clutch bell. So it's going to give you a better launch because your motor is going to be spooled up. And with the GY6 motors, especially on the buggies, RPM is key. You want to keep it in that sweet spot, and you want to keep the motor singing the best you can. So that brings us to what it's grabbing, and this is what our clutch bell. This is what we're going to be using. This is a Banjing. It's a lighter weight clutch bell. This is what they call a snowflake. Comes in 3 colors, but other than looking cool, what's nice about it is about 6 ounces lighter than a stock bell, so it's less rotating mass, which is always going to any rotating part of a motor that's got anything to do with the motor that you can cut the weight down on. That's key. The other nice thing about it is it's got these really fine grooves in it. It's not smooth at all, so it just gives a better surface for grabbing, less slippage. So I mean, it's pretty cool unit. It comes black, gold, and there's different styles. Banjing makes like a 5-spoke and a 9-spoke. They even make a titanium coated one. That looks pretty cool. But in this case, we're going to use this guy here. So together it's going to look like that. Now, this clutch is going to get mounted to the stock pulley. And the stock pulley, we use what's called a torque spring. We take out the stock torque spring, and again, it comes in different colors. There's a blue, there's a yellow, and there's a red. What I prefer, or what I found works best, is go with the yellow. And they call it a torque spring or a contra spring. This guy is too heavy. And how it works is kind of the same premise as using lighter weights in your Variator works. It's going to help you stay in a lower gear longer, and it's going to downshift you quicker. Alright, it puts more tension on the pulley and prevents the belt from going down in the pulley too quickly. Alright, so all of this, what it's doing is giving the buggy an overall torqueier feel, grabbier feel. By going too heavy on the spring and too light on the roller weights, or the weights in your Variator, you can cut off a lot of top speed. So the whole thing is to find that trade-off between the top speed that you need and the takeoff and torquiness that you need to overcome obstacles on hills and stuff like that. So I prefer going with these yellow springs. Medium, it doesn't over clutch it. You know, I kind of like that sweet spot where I feel like it's when I'm maxed out or I'm wide open, that it feels like I'm going at a pretty good clip. But I love that launch. I love to step on the gas and get yanked a little bit. So that being said, there's usually a seat at the bottom of the pulley. Kind of looks like this, but this is actually the top seat that goes at the top of the spring. But there's also a seat that looks like this in the bottom of the pulley. And one other little trick that we've got that we sell from SSP-G is, instead of this torque spring base here, we have what's called a roller torque spring base. And what this does is you take the torque spring base out of the pulley that is in there now, and this guy is 2 pieces. Let me get them apart. There we go. Kind of got jammed in there. Okay. It's a tight fit. This has 2 pieces, and then it's got a little bag of ball bearings. These bearings go in this ridge around here, and then you cap it off, slide it on there. So now you got ball bearings in here, and then your spring goes in there. And what this does is helps keep the spring free and not bind up. It's not just sitting on a dry surface, because all this stuff kind of gets twisty. So this keeps the spring nice and free and prevents it from binding. It's just another added. Is it necessary? No. If you're trying to squeeze every drop of lemonade out of that lemon, then this is something you might want to consider. Just another trick that you can do with your clutch setup. So, that being said, what I use, I guess the one last component we didn't discuss is actually the drive face. Banjing unit. Comes in 2 different colors, blue or red. The fins have been shaved down on this, and with that, it just helps. What we're trying to do is get this thing to spin freer, so we're just taking the wind resistance off of it. Weight-wise, it's the same as a stock. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not a lightweight face. We do sell a lightweight face from SSP-G, but this is actually, I scaled them. They're the same weight as the stock one. The fit and finish on it, if you look at this versus like the stock Chinese replacement Variator drive face, the fit and finish is obviously a lot better on this. Just a good quality part. That being said, what I usually use, and the one last thing I want to talk about is as far as the weights go, roller weights. So I didn't make this rule, but I've read it a bunch of times. But if you're running roller weights now, and a lot of you have probably already upgraded your roller weights, and you might be running a 12 or 10 gram roller, if you're looking to switch to a slider, general rule of thumb is this, and I don't know exactly why. I don't know if that's more to do with the shape than the weight, but if you're looking for the equivalent, let's say you're running, this is a 12 gram roller, and you're looking to try out a slide weight, and you're looking for the equivalent of what you got, but you want to see what the difference is, apples for apples, between your roller and your slider. When you order a slider, or when you purchase sliders, you want to add 2 grams. So if you're running a 12 gram roller and you want the equivalent in a slider, you go with a 14 gram slider. If you're running a 10 gram roller, again, you would go with a 12 gram slider, and that gives you the equivalent. Okay, I don't know why. I probably read it and forgot it. It's just the rule of thumb I've always stuck by, because I've read it in more than one, one forum and one article and this and that and the other thing. But that seems to be the general consensus. So, that being said, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Either leave a comment in the, in the YouTube comments. I will post links to these in the description. If you are interested in this stuff, if you ask me what I'm running, I will tell you. I'm running currently a Dr. Pulley Variator and clutch. I don't want to go into a long explanation. The HIT clutch from Dr. Pulley is a lot different, because instead of 3 springs here, you have the 3 shoe springs and you have 3 pillow springs. It's a very complicated system. I've looked at it, looked at diagrams, videos. I think there's a video of it on my YouTube channel somewhere that I actually took from Dr. Pulley and put on there just for people to kind of gain the concept. I do not know exactly how it works, but I will say this. I've tried a lot of different clutches in my day, and that thing snaps and hits better than anything I've tried yet. I put it in there, I know it's in there, and nothing hits like it. Now, what's on the website and what I use is there's different degree clutches. The pillow, I think it's the pillow degrees or whatnot. I use this 60. There's a 50, a 60, there's actually a 40 and a 20, and maybe a 30, I can't remember. But the difference is this, because I've had people ask me who have HIT clutches, to hit clutch. And the 60 hits harder than any other one they've got. It's got the steepest pillow angle. and it hits harder than any other clutch that Dr. Pulley makes. Okay, there's no way to get that to hit harder. There are spring kits that come with the other clutches, and there are spring kits that come with the 60. The spring kit in the 60 is to lessen the hit. On the other clutches, it's actually to get it to hit harder, but nothing hits harder than the 60. So I use the Dr. Pulley stuff. I really avoided using it for the longest time. Somebody asked me why don't I use it, and I gave it a shot, and then when I gave it a shot, I'm like, yeah, why haven't I been using this? So I use that. I use bandaging bell. I do use the bandaging drive face. I do use the shim kit. I use 12-gram sliders and yellow string with the Bando Kevlar belt. And if you want, I'll even put the links to that stuff on there too. Everything I use, I sell. Everything I sell, I use. So that being said, next video will probably be installing this stuff on the on the carbides motor, and I'll see if I can't get a little. Maybe we'll do a little edit action there and do it step by step and actually add another dimension to the channel here. So that being said, you guys have a good night. Like if you like it, subscribe. More the merrier. Thank you. JD's Custom Buggies out.